What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel for another interview, an interview that I'm very excited about because not only do I get to talk about a really cool new genre film, but it's a feature directorial debut, which I think is one of the most incredible feats to achieve in this industry. Kang making his feature directorial debut with Shaky Shivers. Congratulations, man. This film delighted me.
Oh, thank you so much, Barry. Thank you.
I mean it. I mean it. So to go back to the very beginning of your directing ambitions to start here, do you remember the day or maybe even the specific thing that happened that first made you think to yourself, like, I have to direct a feature film?
Well, I think it started, probably within the first 5 years I started acting, professionally. There was just lack of opportunities for me as an actor, and I always felt like, I think there's more to it than, playing fifth to 10th to 15th, you know, supporting character that's kind of one dimensional or mostly one dimensional. And I always ask myself, well, how am I going to quench this thirst to do something more meaningful or have more contribution to a production, other than playing a small like co-starring role. And I realized it's that you have to create your own material. You have to be behind the camera. You have to create opportunities for yourself and other people that have the same obstacles. So I knew early on, if I did not take control of this problem myself, then I probably would. I use this term that the light behind my artistic light would start dimming, and I would become some jaded actor and bitter. So yeah, very early on, I knew that you have to control your own destiny. So writing and directing is the only way you can do that.
The light behind your artistic light. I'm not going to forget that visual. It's a really interesting way to put all of that into perspective. And I can understand and relate to that quite a bit myself. So you decide you want to direct a film. Does being very well known for your acting help when you want to get the green light on your first feature? Or is it the kind of situation where it requires more convincing, where you have to tell the powers that be, like, no, I am very capable of doing this as well?
Well, it definitely opens the door. Definitely people will, entertain the idea of sitting down with you, and talking with you because, if you're known for particular work or, known at, being part of like a big franchise like Fast, people will give you the benefit of the doubt, if you will, and sit down with you. But still, you have to campaign for yourself. Just because, you've been in a bunch of stuff doesn't mean that, you have a hold of the craft of directing. As an actor, you're usually there for a little bit of pre-production, and then you're part of production, and then you leave, right? So post-production was my weak side, and that was something that I had to learn on my own. And then I think when you sit down with somebody, especially when it comes down to investing money into you, right? It is show business. There's a business behind this. People have to feel confident that you're going to be able to execute, you're going to be able to lead this army and, finish the product. So it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would, be directing as well, so, I think, once you have the confidence in why you're directing and you have an understanding of the overall journey it takes to make a film as a director, I think people feel it. I think the smart ones sit down with you and they go, this guy knows, or this person knows what they're talking about. So, but it took a while. It took a while to get the financing, even though our budget is minimal. For nothing is free in life, right? So for people to fork over that kind of money was very challenging.
I have a million follow-up questions. Before I get too far ahead, though, I am just curious. In general, are you a big horror fan?
Well, during my childhood, I wouldn't say I was into like the slasher films, but I definitely appreciated and love films like, American Werewolf in London, Gremlins, even Freddy Krueger, and, Jason was, one of the, characters that I grew up with. And, they're part of my video store filmography, right? So, I think as a kid on Friday and Saturday nights, you get together, your friends, and you watch these classic horror films. So, they were definitely part of my life and part of why I appreciated, movies, especially the practical elements of the monsters and the prosthetics and the artwork that it took to create a lot of these, visual compelling, werewolves and monsters of that era.
Definitely see a lot of those influences in your movie right now. Just for fun, because I love fan casting my favorite actors in my favorite horror franchises. If you could pick one iconic horror franchise to join, which one would you pick and why?
I'd love to play Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street. That it's that character was just so fun. Having experience with prosthetic makeup and sitting in the chair for 4 hours, like I did in the Obi-Wan series in Star Wars. That's the only part that, I kind of wonder if, I have the stamina to sit in a makeup chair for months. But, that character was so fun. That sweater to this day so iconic, and, the knife finger. So I would definitely love that. That'd be on the bucket list for sure.
That's now on my bucket list. I need you. I need to see you play Freddy Krueger at this point. All right. Back to your film now. So you kind of just touched on this a little bit in particular with the post-production, but even with all your experience acting and producing as well, was there any particular thing about what it takes to direct a feature film that you didn't even realize was part of that job, where when you had to do it, it made you stop and think like, wow, I did not realize this was on the list of duties for a director?
Well, the concept and the mastery of leadership is something that I think I just had a theory of what it took to, lead a creative army to a finished project. And it really was, also, I think channeling and understanding yourself, right? Like, I grew a lot during that process because, as an actor, you are responsible for yourself and your role, right? But as a director, you are in a way a parent. And, I lacked that experience, and I realized that, I'm flawed in so many ways and selfish in so many ways and stubborn in so many ways. And, to be able to get the best out of, a creative crew and cast, you have to, know yourself and I think, find peace in who you are and accept your flaws. And I think once you do that, and, people will see that there is humility in the way you approach leadership. And, I do feel like, there was a lot of self-exploration that I didn't know that I had to go through. Like every night, you're the last one to go to sleep, like you can choose to, be the person that is going to start, preparing for the next day's outing, and, I would reflect and go, I probably approached that, day incorrectly, and I could have been more supportive, or could have, been more engaged, been more empathetic. And, I was like, and so daily, you're falling on your face and you have to lift yourself up, right? So, there's a lot of self-reflection I didn't think I had to go through.
So, with all of that in mind, is there anything about your experience directing Shaky Shivers that you have found influencing your own approach to your work as an actor now, where kind of viewing the craft of acting from a different vantage point or having a better understanding of what it takes to be a director is changing the way you approach your work in that particular field?
Yeah, I as an actor now, I know what the director is going through. He has a million decisions, and I'm more empathetic. I try to be, that, you know, that member of the family that, you know, is thinking ahead for the director. Like I'm trying to be like three steps ahead, and also, being empathetic to what that person is going through, especially if they're having a tough day. Before it would be about me, and I'm like, why is that person so upset, or why are they behaving that way? So it's definitely made me less selfish, if you will. So I mean, I think that's a good thing. So there's a lot of times, as an actor, you just have to worry about yourself, right? And I do approach and I use the operative contribution. It's like, it's not just about you, it's about the whole, and the project as a whole. And I think when you have a member of the team that is, also watching out for you, is there, thinking a few steps ahead for you, it just helps, right? So it's calmed me down a lot. And I think, being a director is it just matures you a lot, especially at my age, so it's definitely changed my perspective as an actor.
I've always been a very big believer that even if someone just wants to focus on one particular craft, it's always beneficial to have at least a little bit of an understanding of what everyone else on a set has to do. And it'll wind up maybe enhancing your
Absolutely.
own work for the better. So having those kinds of experiences, I think, makes all the
Absolutely.
difference.
Agreed.
So, how about now when directing your leads here? Maybe what's something you wish that more directors had done for you on set in the past that you strove to do for them to make sure that they had it on this film?
I think because as an actor, I always hoped that I had a director, or a leader that was rooting for you. Sometimes you felt like you were kind of there, you know alone, and kind of there to dry, hang to dry, if you will. And I wish sometimes a director would over communicate with me and just give me validation, especially when I was younger. Like these days, I'm not looking for that, or I don't need it as much. But when you're a young person, you do need validation, and and it could just be in a physical gesture, or just a look or a wink, and I'm extra sensitive to the actor's state of mind on set, and I can see how there's such a thin line where that confidence can break. So you have to be the ultimate cheerleader, and some actors don't need that, but then I think actors tend to be insecure animals to begin with. So I just try to be the ultimate cheerleader for them.
Those vibes and that support is of the utmost importance on sets. How about just in terms of the techniques you use and the way you operate? Is there any particular director you've worked with in the past, especially as you were leading up to directing Shaky Shivers, that you found yourself, observing what they were doing and maybe applying their techniques to your own approach to the work the most?
I had the opportunity to work with Walter Hill, iconoclast in his own right, who did 48 Hours and worked with Peck and Paw, and I got to work with him on this Sylvester Stallone film called Bullet to the Head. And then years later, I got to work with Robert Rodriguez, and the reason I bring these two directors up is that they share everything. There's nothing, there's no secrets to their craft. There's no voodoo. They'll show you all of their notes and their sketches, and their storyboards and their notes, and and they just have this passion for filmmaking, and also they're not selfish with their knowledge, and they ask the crew and the cast to know the script and know what's in their head. I remember I got to hang out with Robert Rodriguez at his home, and he invited the cast over, and he taught me something about service. Is that when the leader is willing to serve you, um, and he's there to, to fan that creative, that creative, those creative juices, if you will. Um, I went over his house and he made us pizza, and he didn't just make us pizza. He explained, why he uses the certain type of flour and the type of water and his clay oven and the honey that he uses for the pizza dessert and the type of cheese. And and then he would have us, he would ask us to go into his little, he had a little drawing room, and asked us if we would gift him with something, a picture or a poem or something, and so he could remember, our artistic contribution. I remember this evening, and I'm like, wow, this is such a lovely evening, And then I would ask him questions about, his previous movies, and I go, how did you do that? And what, was that an expensive like shot? What was the budget for that? And he would literally pull out his computer and he goes, let me show you some. And he would break the scenes down and, and explain like how you can do something, with minimal money, and, explaining to me the importance of an actor that is willing to, take risks and try and, and just the importance of a cast and crew that's willing to, dance with you, right? So, these lessons, and then Walter Hill, explaining to me that, even though he had, a prolific career, as he started getting older, it was interesting where he said to me, kid, when I was a younger person, I wouldn't understand what you go through as an actor, because you talk about lack of opportunities as a minority. And he goes, I understand that now as an older person, because, at my age, there's this ageism in Hollywood, and, there's little opportunities for me. And I was like, wow, the cruelty of Hollywood, like everyone has their time. An average director maybe does 6 to 10 movies in their lifetime, right? So you realize that things are finite, and enjoy it. And I think that's why Walter, on set, he was like a kid in a candy store. That was his happy place, right? So, I think all these like, wonderful lessons have, I think, given me a foundation that is based in like reality too, and also based in, like this ethos of contribution, like, how do I give back, and it's like information, is free, right? So you can keep sharing and keep sharing. And that's what I try to do, is that anyone with a question, I go, I'll give you all the answers, right? And I think, and that's how you, I think, make contribute to better films in the future, because you have these, wonderful disciples, if you will, right? Of, this type of ethos. And if you do that, because these folks did that to me, giving me that, I give that back. And, that is something that, I try to emulate, as I get older too.
What a beautiful answer. I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but that's why I love interviewing artists about their work so much, because getting some of that behind the scenes information out there, you never know who that could inspire or how it can enhance someone else's work. And the thought of that happening, even if it's just on like the smallest scale, just no, it thrills me and fills my heart.
Thank you.
So to get into some specifics here, because it is a very ambitious first feature, of all of the creature design and stunt work required for the film, going into production, which thing did you think was going to be the most challenging to pull off? And then ultimately, was it indeed the most challenging, or did something else catch you by surprise?
Well, there's a sequence in the film that's an homage to the American Werewolf in London, the werewolf transformation. That the character Karen has, or Lucy has. And I knew it was going to be challenging, right? Because, time is our enemy, money is our enemy. But because we were blessed with, the Gabe Bartalis's, his experience and his passion for the practical effects. And he was also a Rick Baker disciple, that Rick Baker actually he worked on American Werewolf in London, so he knew exactly what I wanted, or what I was going for. It was like, a tip to the hat to, that's that werewolf transformation in American Werewolf in London. Um, and, we were fortunate because we had, Brooke Markham, who's just a fantastic actress. So if, an actress couldn't, pull that performance off, it would be borderline really hokey. I actually would be hokey. And also too, we just didn't have time. I think that whole sequence, I should have taken a few days minimum, like at least 2, 3 days minimum, but we had like 2 hours, right? And it was nerve wracking because I was like, this could be really dumb and not really work. And even when I was shooting, I was like, I don't think I have enough coverage. And, I didn't, I felt like, Gabe didn't have enough time to really, to be able to work on the prosthetics on that day. Cause, it's like, I think he had like an hour and a half of prep to put on to be, because that sequence goes in order. So you can't just put the prosthetics on it. Like you have to, it starts with the hand, and, you have to put a little bit on the face, and then goes, and then we focus on the back, and there's so many elements, but again, without Gabe, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And then it's also the magic of editing too, and, sound design, right? So it turned out okay. I'm not, I can't say that I'm like completely happy with it, but that's also art, and I don't think a director is ever really satisfied with their work, right? So I wish we had more of everything, but I do, applaud, and I'm so grateful to Brooke and and Gabe for making that work out. So.
For what it's worth, from my perspective, I think you made the most of the time and the resources you had, and it perfectly aligns with the tone of the film too. I've covered so many movies out there that have werewolf transformations or other paranormal entities for that matter, and the movie essentially hinges on that working. And the entire time it was happening, I was sitting there watching, wildly impressed by what you were all able to pull off. So I
Wow.
understand that always reaching for more as a director mentality, but you should be very proud of what you did in that particular sequence.
Well, thank you so much, Barry. Thank you.
I mean it. I mean it.
Thank you.
Um, I wanted to end with a question about the ongoing strikes right now, because we are lucky enough to get to talk to you because we are talking about your directorial debut right now. But there is a lot happening in this industry that we like to shine a spotlight on however we can, whenever possible, just to make sure the message is continuing to get out there as these situations progress. So for you, I know there's probably many answers to this particular question, but what is something that maybe you didn't have in the past as an actor that these negotiations are pushing for that you think could make for a better working experience for you in the future? Something that you are eager to have and progress forward with?
Mm, that's a great question, Perry. I don't even know how to answer that. I don't think versed. I mean, I don't think I don't know. I mean, that's I mean, that's a really good. What? Hmm. Well, I mean, the strike is really representing what the change in what we did have in the past. For instance, like residuals, right? I mean, our union has been so good at protecting our residuals, so we could be able to qualify for health insurance, etc. And I know that that's one of the things that our union is fighting for, because with streaming, a check that yearly would be $1,400 is now around $40, because streaming just doesn't pay residuals. Um, and when my wife was sick and she had to get medical care, and you had to meet that. I think it's around like $30,000 a year to qualify for SAG insurance. the residuals pretty much were able to cover most of that, or, fill in the gaps, right? So, an actor could do a few guest stars and, maybe like a small feature, and then, the residuals would like take care of the rest. But today, it's almost nothing, right? So that's something, our union is fighting to preserve. So, I'm not answering your question, but that's something that I completely, agree with, because it's on such a personal level with our residuals. I don't think, I definitely would not have been able to afford, health care, and the care that my wife needed when she was sick, and so I know that's not answering your question, but it's, I feel like that's something that is very personal to me, and this idea of actors being able to, subsidize their income by, the, our work from the past, and, what the residuals allowed us to be able to, to have in terms of medical care and stuff. It's going away, right? So it's really, it's much, much harder. Like, I wonder, with, real estate prices in LA and New York, like how a young actor, is able to afford to be able to go to acting class, and pay their rent and have a car and then gas money and have healthy food. When I was younger, my rent was like $500, and I could have a little studio apartment, and I could work as a bartender and a delivery guy, and, have a few part-time jobs and still make it to auditions. But today, you're not able to do that. So residuals are so important, and so, yeah, I mean, I know I'm not answering a question, but that's something that is so important, right? So.
It is an answer to and it's an important way to answer the question, because it also represents the fact that unless we see these negotiations through right now, it's going to cause major problems for actors who want to enter the industry in the future. Like, at a point in time, actors and writers were lucky enough to have certain things, but because of the change in the business model, those things are disappearing, and it's going to make it an unsustainable career path for others in the future. And that just breaks my heart into a million pieces.
Mm. Yeah.
So I'm glad we were able to shine a little bit of a spotlight on that situation right now, because we do not get an excellent movie like Shaky Shivers without all the wildly talented artists we have in this industry. And they all deserve to get what they earn for their hard work, because otherwise we do not get great movies and shows. Congratulations on Shaky Shivers. I mean what I say. It is a delightful ride. And I'll take a moment just to give people a sense of what the vibe is. It made me feel a little like when I was a kid growing up, becoming a horror lover, watching something like Are You Afraid of the Dark? Something that kind of joyfully explored those kinds of supernatural scenarios. And simply put, it just made me happy to watch it. And I feel like a lot of genre lovers out there are going to wind up feeling the same exact way when they see it in theaters via Cineverse and Fathom events. They're releasing the film in theaters for just one night only on September 21st. So do not miss it, because I will also add to that little description that I gave that it is a great it's a great communal watch. Like, I would love to see it on the big screen with a bunch of people who are as passionate about the genre as I am, and who have grown up with an affection for these types of things. So see it in theaters. Again, congratulations. This movie's something else.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you for your time.